The life of a writer is not always an easy one. To begin to write, one has to gather information with honesty and integrity before putting pen to paper. Writing requires a closeness with the subject, one might even say an intimacy. From that perspective, I know what it is like to be raped, beaten, and left to die. In writing the story, I have been brought close to the excruciating pain of acid burning the skin, to children abducted, their limbs twisted to evoke greater pity and sent out to the streets to beg by the dadas of Delhi, to a woman who before my very eyes turned into a ghost of her former self, the daughter she gave away in marriage having been burnt alive in dowry demand. I watched her walking the streets with dead eyes. Her story remains alive inside me for now. I understand hunger. Humiliation is familiar. Pain and poverty is no stranger. In learning how to write, I subconsciously develop a photographic memory. I remember things that I focus on clearly, requiring only to write down names, dates, and places. The young lady with black, frightened eyes, beaten to an inch of her life, found me. In New Delhi, I took her in, and when the children went to school, she began to talk, to tell me her story, bawling and crying her eyes out. We were both foreign brides. She had no one else but me. When she was rescued, her story stayed fresh in my head. Pounding on the keys of an old typewriter, I wrote the story that is today the book Hush, Don't Cry. Writing articles for the newspaper taught me how to communicate, to empathize, and to understand human emotions. It opened my eyes to see people differently and whetted the appetite to know more. My father, whom I adored, cried when he recalled how at age 12 he picked up his mother and put her on the bull cart. He took her to the hospital more than 12 miles away. Groaning, child in her belly already dead, they reached the hospital in the late afternoon. The next morning, he buried her in the cemetery behind the hospital before going home. His father, a living legend at the time, came only to give away his 4 sons to a relative who enslaved them and stole their inheritance. Pa was already gone when I sat down to write the story. Somewhere inside a few pages, I realized that I did not know my father. He had not been able to tell the rest of his story for the tears that sprang to his eyes, nor did I have the heart to hear of the heartache and suffering. I therefore fictionalized the story to portray a typical father. In the footsteps of Rama resulted. So much more I carry within. I am haunted by the sight of a woman with jabri hair flying as she raced behind the prison van carrying her son to the magistrate's court in San Fernando. Years have passed and still I hear her voice in my head. Oh God, me belly go bust, I can't bear this no more. I color my words with skin scratched by the sharp blades of cane leaves. The lagoon water stains have remained on my feet beneath my fingernails. These hands that now hold a pen once held the gilpin and grass knife. I pull words from Mother Earth to tell the stories as I turn the pages in the books I must write. I am one, and at the same time, I become the thousands whose emotions I assimilated to make it my own. I swallow the sufferings as it imprinted itself on my soul. To gain release, I sat down to write, to pour it out into pages. You can say that as a writer, I am blessed and I am cursed. And the great heights have not passed me by. Like an eagle soaring high, I tasted the ecstasy of freedom. Village to village, I moved through Guyana, from Manaus in Brazil up the river Amazon to an Amerindian village, to great cassava with women, and cut huge bunches of fig, to drink coffee and talk through the night. Traveling through Europe on buses and trains, following the less beaten path, to see with these eyes the common man in his everyday life. Catching a river boat to get back to England for the royal wedding, moving through streets packed with merrymakers, taking my place on Fleet Street to accompany journalists on assignments, to see with new eyes all everyday happenings, to take off to India to romance roots and get in the middle of the aftermath of Indira Gandhi's assassination, to walk through my ancestral village in Javanpur, Uttar Pradesh, and accompany the sea of faded white cotton-clad men, women, and children heading for Lakhanpur, to watch hands raise as a helicopter came in sight, shouting Vasudev Pandav Zindabad, to experience the ultimate roots journey with the then Prime Minister of my island home, Basudev Pandey, to welcome to India fellow journalists for the annual Parvasi Bharati Nivas, and finally to rest with gratitude and contentment to continue to play with the magic of words. I prayed for it, wanted it with all my heart, and lived it to my heart's content. I am a writer, and writers are withdrawn for a reason. There are unwritten books living inside them. I write because there is no tomorrow without yesterday, and yesterday's stories lying scattered in fragments contain life lessons too precious to discard. In life, each of us are called upon to walk through the fire and lift mountains too. It is the essence of a meaningful life. For others to know, the writer must first write it, and hopefully some of us are blessed with the right words to convey the intended message. Thank you.